We are in the middle of the Shar Teshuva and Orchos Tzadikim. We're up to the section where he's going through the 20 steps of Teshuva. So this is pretty much going to parallel the 20 steps of Teshuva that we're learning in the Rabbi Shar Teshuva with slight differences, and it's a little, he writes it in a more of a terse manner. It's a little more brief in the Orchos Tzadikim, so we're probably going to surpass where we're holding in the Shar Teshuva. So we saw the first three last time. We saw number one was charata, was remorse. Number two, after remorse, we had azivas achet. A person has to get rid of the sin. He has to decide that he's not going to stay on this path. He wants to change his path, and that's what he does. That is the second step of tshuva. The third step of tshuva is yagoin. Yagoin is that more intense remorse, that the person really, really feels bad. And both the Rabbi Yonah and the Orchos Tzadikim say that as much as one cares for the person that he or she wronged, that's how much yagoin is going to have. So if you offend someone and it doesn't bother you so much, that means that, I'm not as close with that person as I am with other people. The closer I am with this person and I offended them, the more it's going to bother me. So according to the level of a person's yagoin, according to the level of his intense remorse, is going to be his tshuva. And the Rabbi Yonah said, when a person repents, he's chozer b'tshuva because he's physically afflicted, that's his guf, that's his body doing tshuva. But when he's chozer b'tshuva, when he repents, because he realizes how bad it is to sin, that's his neshama doing tshuva. It's starting from the neshama, from the intellect, and then Hashem says, the neshama was that entity that was with me. I feel very close to the neshama. It's like the king forgiving his close family members and his close friends, which he'll do much more readily than forgiving some stranger. So that's the importance of, and it's all about focus and contemplation. In other words, we're learning these svarim together, but unless a person takes time and he actually, goes through the process, and a person has to set up time in his day. We're starting with Slichas B'Hashem Motzei Shabbos. Mamish is heading close towards Rosh Hashanah. We've been learning this the whole Elul, which is Geshmak. It's great, but we really have to take this to heart and actually do it. So our project over the weekend and through next week should really be to take at least the first three steps, which are the three basic steps of charata, remorse, azivas achet, deciding I'm going to leave the sin, and then thinking more and more and more about how gefährlich, how bad it is to sin against Hashem, and then confession. A person has to confess to himself, not to anyone else. A person says, I did such and such, and think about how bad that is and how one's going to correct himself in the future. The fourth step in the tshuva process, haravi, yogoin v'tsar b'maisa. That is having yogoin, this intense remorse, and tsar and pain, b'maisa, with action. So until now, everything has taken place in the person's head. The fourth step of tshuva, we already get into the olam hamaisa, we get into the world of actions. And in this fourth step, both Rabbi Yonah as well as here in the Orchos Tzadikim, they focus on two parts of the body, the heart and the eyes. Chazal say that the heart and the eyes, the two parts of the body, they get a person to sin. They're the middlemen. The Shadchanim will say, they're Meshadich, the person and the Aveir. The eye sees, or the heart desires, and the eye sees. Or the eye sees and the heart desires. The heart doesn't mean obviously one's physical heart. In the language of Chazal, the heart really means the neshama. It means the person's intellect. So those are the two areas of the body that sin, that cause the person to sin. And that's what the person has to change. So first, the Orchos Tzadikim says that he must show simanei tsar v'yogoin b'malbusha. It's interesting. The first place to start with the outward expression of the tshuva process is in one's clothing. An example he gives here, which I will not recommend this today, is lach or sak, to walk outside with a sackcloth. If one does this today, they'll probably end up getting arrested. But the idea is that a person should be aware, when a person is heading towards a trial, so he wants to look nice because he wants to look nice and presentable, but he doesn't really care about the fashion so much. A person's in the process of doing tshuva, he realizes there are serious things in his life that he must fix, He's not focusing on his clothing. So we should tone down the dress a little bit. That's step number one. Step number two, another idea, says the Orchos Tzadikim, Yema'it ta'anugim b'minei hamaychel, v'hanishta v'atiyulim. A person also should, minimize his exposure to gashmis. So if he's used to having a big piece of cake for dessert, he has to have a piece of cake. There's something called the Tainus HaRavid. The Ravid was one of the Rishonim. He was a contemporary of the Rambam. In the Rambam Sefer Mishnah Torah, you have the Hasagas HaRavid. You have the Ravid's objections, more often than not, to what the Rambam says. So the Ravid was one of the big Rishonim, and he was mechadish. He really introduced the concept of a certain type of fast. And normally a fast, a tainus, means the whole day we fast. He introduced the concept of a person's eating, and you get to the point where if you stop eating now, person's not going to die, right? Person's, the Rambam says you should fill yourself up 2/3 of the way. The person's already full, he's already fine, but there's more food on his plate. He holds himself back, l'shem, in the sake of just minimizing pleasure. Let's say a person did Naver, you want to do Teshuva. So fasting is not something we do. We're not very into fasting. We discuss this in the morning koil, the Tainus shir, or in Maseches Tainus. So even though the Gemara often will say in the Shulchan Aruch as well, in Hilchos Tainus, that fasting is very prevalent in the times of the Gemara in Shulchan Aruch. That if a person had a bad dream, or if something bad happened, they got into a car accident, and you saw that okay, I think something needs to be fixed, they would fast. Today, the poskim say we shouldn't do that. We fast on the days the Chazal mandated, and that Yom Kippur is midaraisa, but otherwise we don't fast. But this Tainus HaRavid is recommended. So maybe I won't have dessert, or I won't have a third piece of chicken, whatever it is, the person that holds back a little bit. So that's the yisoid in Sar B'maisa, in showing that I'm going through the Teshuva process, is that I hold myself back from indulging in pleasure. Rabbi Schreck quotes Chazal to Yerushalmi in Brachos, Halei ve'einayim, the heart and the eyes, as we mentioned before. Shnei sarsure hachet. They are the two middlemen. A sarsur is the middleman. They're the middlemen of chet, of sin. It says, V'leisasuru, don't go after achrei levavchem, after your hearts, v'achrei einechem, after your eyes. We say this in Kriya Shema every day. Lachein b'zoi sichupa avon sarsurim. So with this, the aveira of the middleman will be atoned for. So with the heart, with the intellect, it's the merirus v'tzar, it's the person going through that somewhat psychological torture, not really a torture, but thinking about how bad it is, getting upset, righteous indignation with oneself, and the einayim with crying, with tears. That's the outward way that we express our tshuva process. So that is that's what he says when it comes to Tsar B'maisa. Number 5, the 5th step in the tshuva process, hadaiga. Number 5 is daiga. Daiga is concern, is worry. He should be nervous of the punishment that he's going to receive for his averis, because there are certain averis, the Gemara in Yuma discusses, that tshuva is toila, which means tshuva does something. So now the aver is hanging. Toila kaparasin, the yisurin memarkin, and only affliction, the person who's going to be afflicted, will knock out the aver. And he quotes Tzukkim. He says, Yagoin is for the past, and Daiga is for the future. So Yagoin, I'm focused on how could I sin? What I did back then was really bad. Daiga, I'm thinking to the future that how scared I am of the punishments that Chas v'Shalom a person can face. Also, a person should be concerned that maybe he did not fulfill his obligation in tshuva. And thirdly, he should be concerned, he should be worried that maybe his yetzer hara, his evil inclination, will come again. It happened once, it happened twice, it happened 3 times, maybe it's going to happen again. So there is a constant worry that a person is under to make sure that he's doing everything properly. And this worry really comes with any responsibility a person has in life. A person is running a business, right? So he's responsible for the business. He's going to be worried about it. It's not when we say anxiety, which is a very negative connotation, that is probably, I'm assuming, it's like a paralyzing worry. But if a person is not worried about anything, he's not concerned, there's a problem, right? It means he doesn't have any responsibility. Anytime a person has responsibility for something or for someone, there's going to be concern. A person wants to make sure that his kids are following in his path. A person wants to make sure that his business, sometimes you feel the responsibility of, a guy has 50 workers, so he feels responsible to help them be mefarnes their families. There's responsibility in life. So worry, even though now there's a very bad association with anxiety and worry, but really one has to have it. Anyone who's responsible has worry that he's living up to his responsibilities. So Teshuva Averis, that's our number one responsibility in life. So our entire lives, from the time a person does his first or her first Aveira, from then on, they're in a constant state of worry. It doesn't mean they can't enjoy a wedding. It doesn't mean they can't enjoy a Shabbos Suda, spend time with the family. What that means is that they're aware that I'm involved in something very serious, and therefore I always have in the back of my mind a concern. People who own a business, it's on their mind. They can enjoy themselves, but if things need to be fixed, they're concerned about that. Now that's healthy and that's fine. That's daiga, that's the concern. Hashishi, the sixth step in Teshuva, is habusha. Busha is translated as embarrassment. Same pasuk as quoted in the Shari Teshuva. Yirmiyah Hanavi says, I'm embarrassed, and I'm also klima. Often the Tanakh says busha and klima. The Rabbi Yoina said busha is the embarrassment. Klima, nichlamti, refers to when the color of their face changes. It's like a certain level of embarrassment. There are averas that people do that they would never do in front of other people. They would never do it. Let's take a simple one, right? Benching is a mitzvah d'oraisa. A person is hungry and he eats, and now he's full. There's a mitzvah d'oraisa to bench. Let's say he's sitting at his kitchen table on Tuesday evening after dinner, he has to bench. And it's 15 minutes to mincha, and he wants to get a little bit early, and whatever. So he benches, goes very quickly, right? He would have anyone else sitting there and watching how he benches, a person. So he would bench probably with more kavana. The person's watching me, right? If he's benching in front of his whole shul, right, or his whole family, so he would definitely have more kavana. But we're benching in front of Hashem. So the idea of busha, the way a person engenders busha in himself, is to realize that the Kadosh Baruch Hu is there. How could a person not be embarrassed in front of Hashem? There's a whole gate of busha in the Sefer, which Be'ezras Hashem we will get to, where he discusses busha. But in the context of Teshuva, it's the understanding that when a person sins, Hashem is there. Hashem is aware of it. That's number 6. Right, so we have remorse, getting rid of the chait, yagoing that more intense remorse, then tsar b'maisa, doing outward actions to show that I'm upset. It's the fasting, the tiny sarayvit, as we discussed, the toning down the clothing, the dressing, the crying. Then we have the concern, a person has concern, and then he has to have a feeling of busha. Hashvi'i, the 7th step in Teshuva, is hahachna, b'cholev v'hashiflus. The 7th step is a person not feeling like an arrogant person, not feeling like a balgaiva. Kiamakir as boiroi, someone who understands and recognizes who Hashem is. Yeda kama she'avar al dvarav, he'll know how much the person, oneself, has transgressed the Kadosh Baruch Hu's words. V'yashpil atzmai v'yakana, he's going to lower himself and submit himself. Zivchei Elokim, the pasuk says in Tehillim, ruach nishbara. The sacrifice, the korban for Hashem, is a ruach nishbara, is a low heart, a low spirit. Leiv nishbar v'nitke Elokim lo yisivzeh. Hashem will not loathe someone who comes to him with a low heart, with a broken heart. Ruach nishbara hi ruach namucha. It's a low spirit. Ha'achnahi me'ikre tshuva. This feeling of being low, I mean, not low that I'm a garnished, I'm a nothing, but I'm a feeling of when a person doesn't live up to expectations, He's not going to walk around all proud. Sometimes we feel invincible walking around like we're God's gift to the world. A person who does Nevera realizes that he mamish messed up. And it's not good. And it's not right. And that gives a person a certain humility, a certain, he submits himself more to Kadosh Baruch Hu. It says the pasuk in Yeshaya, El Za'abit, Hashem is saying through the Navi, to this I will look, El Ani Unechei Ruach, at the poor person, at the person who holds himself low. The Madrege El Yoina of Hachna, the highest level of Hachna, is that a person is Magdil V'Yadir B'Avodas HaBayri. He blows up in his mind the greatness of service of Hashem, how great that is and how much he's obligated to live up to that. This is a hard one. A person in his mind never feels accomplished. That's the words are. Okay, so that's what he's saying. We'll have to figure out if today we're holding on such a low level, this would be destructive for us. But first we must learn what the Orchos Tzadikim says, and then we'll see how we apply it to ourselves. So the words are, Lo yachzik toiv atzmai. He doesn't, Hazakas toiv means, like, I give myself credit. I'll take credit for that. I get credit, right? He doesn't give himself any credit. All his accomplishments are like nothing. When he thinks about in relation to how much he's obligated in his service of Hashem. Therefore, he lowers himself and he does his avodas Hashem b'hatznaya, a little more tzniusdik with a little more humbleness, humility, modesty. A person should not desire honor for his good actions. Sometimes people demand honor, and it's hard sometimes to, it bothers others. Why is this guy demanding honor? A person who demands honor is foolish, because this person thinks that he's actually done like a really good thing. Like, look what I did. I saved this person's life, or whatever it is. A person comes in like, I'm the guy. I'm the one who did it. That just shows how foolish he is, that he doesn't realize how much Hashem expects of him. If a person really understood what's going on, he would never hold himself so high. There's the biggest shir in the world, if I'm not mistaken, is of Asher Arieli in the Mir Yeshiva. Like 700 people in the shir. There's the miklat downstairs, and then they have like a sound system that brings it up to the dormitory. A massive, massive shir. You see the man walking through. He's wearing a shirt and pants. He's not wearing a tie. He's wearing a shirt. He's walking around like he's a gornish. If you would see him, you wouldn't think. You think he's a regular guy sitting and learning in the mirror. You wouldn't think he's this massive Talmud Chacham. Tzaddik was the biggest shir in the world. So you always wonder, how does he pull that off? He knows that he is the biggest shir in the world. He knows that, right? In one of the top yeshivas in the Yerushalayim. So how does he pull off being so humble? And you can tell by the way a person walks. You can tell people, we've all been around long enough to be able to tell who's faking it and who's the real deal. He's the real deal. So I'm just thinking now, it could be that a person like that is thinking to himself, like, what does Hashem expect of me? His expectations are so great, so if you, if you're able to jump and touch the ceiling, all the little kids are so excited, wow, that's such a great thing. You're not going to be so proud of yourself. For an adult to jump and touch the ceiling is not a big deal. But all my kids get so excited when I do it. Wow, Kartik, you're the best, you're the greatest. But I know that that's not really so chashuv as far as my obligations in life and my accomplishments in life. That's not really chashuv. So if Rav Asher views what he's doing as that, based in relation to what Hashem expects of him, not comparing him giving a shir for decades to thousands and thousands of people like hitting a ceiling, but in the sense that for him, he owes Hashem so much more. So the little kids are getting excited that, wow, Rebbe, you have the biggest share in the world. He's thinking to himself, but you know what more I could do, how much more Hashem expects of me? So that humbles a person. So when a person's haughty about their ma'asim tovim, about their mitzvahs, about the Talmud Torah, it just goes to show how they're not thinking. That is what the Orchos Tzadikim is saying. And therefore, in the Teshuva process, it's healthy to think about whatever I did, there's so much more I could do. Now, Bez Hashem, next week, on Tuesday, maybe we'll come back to this point and we'll see, because I'm sure people are thinking, so I can never take credit for what I do. I can never really feel good about what I do because there's always so much more. And is that going to serve to push a person further away? So we'll have to discuss that, but Ezra Hashem, next Tuesday. Shukayach.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Pleasure, thank you.